Okay, can we have everybody take a seat, please? I have to kill the lights too. Well, what in a little bit. All right, good evening, all. As per my usual first request, if I can ask everybody to turn their ringers off on their phones or turn their phones off so that the ringing does not interfere with the guest speaker. For those of you that don't know, we have our big raffle still going on. Tomorrow is the drawing. $10 will get you a chance at a Geocron and a $300 gift card. And George KC1V has tickets. And we need to sell at least another 30 to break even, and a little more than that to make some money for the club. Hopefully the storm won't bother us much because we usually sell 60 to 80 tickets at the flea market. But if you get them tonight, you'll beat the rush tomorrow. You do not have to be there to win. You just go. Not for this one. You never had for this one, Fran. Anyways, tickets are $10 a piece. You win a Geocron Atlas 4K. It's pretty awesome machinery. And then the $300 gift card, you can buy whatever size monitor and mounting bracket you want at Best Buy, and they all go together. It's an $800 and something prize. $10 wins, gives you a chance. Max of 250 tickets sold. My guess is we'll have somewhere 130, 140. So, you get a 1 in 140 or 2 in 140 chance. It's pretty good odds. You won't get that in the mass lottery, that's for sure. If you're thinking about joining or renewing with the ARL, please do so through the club. George and Ken and have sheets you can sign in, and we get a little kickback. If you're renewing, we get a $5 kickback from the league. If you're a brand new ARL member, we'll get $15 back. So as part of our clubs associated with the ARL, that's one of the nice things that they're doing for us, and they of course get our support, and we've been supporting them for 75 years. Don't forget about the weekly net on 10 meters on 28,375, 7 p.m. on Monday nights. There's a theme every night, a question, and it's always a lot of fun. I've been making 2 or 3 of them a month. And net control is Gary KC1JZR, who's up on the hill on Mount Tom, and he can usually be heard all over the place and has a great signal. And come and join us. It's always a lot of fun conversing about all sorts of different subjects. So that's Monday nights, 28,375. And let's see here, what else do we have here? So coming up, or actually going on now, starting January 1st, the league has ARL volunteers on the air. It's going on right now. You can work anybody, and that's an ARL member, and get at least 1 point. And when you sync your logs with Logbook of the World, it automatically calculates your points. Now, if you're a ARL member, you get a point. If you're if you work one of the W1AW/1s, I think that's 5 points. If you work anybody that has a field services title, that's more points. If you work me, I'm worth 30 points as a Western Mass affiliated club coordinator, along with member and all that. So it's something you can do. It's a lot of fun. You can track your status, and it goes all year round. Massachusetts will be on the air between April 12th and 18th. And we have, right now we've got, I think, 15 or 18 ops that'll be activating that on all different modes. So you can try to work us. Each state's going to be on the air twice, and it's another fun thing to do. Let's see here. So we, as everybody knows, we've been doing Share the Knowledge a couple of times a month. In February, Bob K1YO gave a talk on low-cost tools for the amateur radio operator. First one that was on physical tools. The second was on nano VNA and tiny SA, I think it was. All the videos have been recorded. They're up on the HCRA website. And the next one coming up is March 14th with Jurgen talking about modern radio teletype. In March 28th, we have the YLRL, which is a Young Lady Radio League. And April 11th, we have AA1SE is going to talk about the ARRL and all. So please join us. It's going to be, they're all on Zoom. They all get recorded and they all go up on the website, and it's on our HCRA YouTube channel. So tonight we have Fred and Anita, AB1OC and AB1QB, going to talk about their Bora Bora DXpedition, maybe a little bit of satellite radio, and anything else that may come across as interesting. Before we let them go, does anybody have any questions or comments about anything going on? Quiet group tonight. Okay.
One quick question, Larry.
Go ahead.
Can I get my tickets over PayPal?
Yes, you can. You got better
Okay.
do it before. You better do it tonight before tomorrow morning.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank-
George. Oh yeah, another question.
Hi, it's N1AW. Is the event on for tomorrow?
That's a Mount Tom thing. It's not a Hampden County thing. I have to assume it's going to be on.
Huh.
Yeah, we have no control over. That's all Mount Tom.
Okay, I thought
But
somebody.
It's probably going to take major snow to cancel it, and 2 to 4 inches, which is predicted here, is not going to be enough to
okay.
cancel it.
They're saying much more up here. Thank you.
You're
Larry?
welcome. Yes.
Should they include anything for the offset the PayPal fee?
Yeah, if they're paying via PayPal, they need to add an extra $2 to cover the PayPal fee. Okay. Oh. George, can you raise your hand? Okay, so I'm gonna turn it over to AB1OC here. Where are you, Fred? There you are. And you have the floor, and I'm gonna hold the mic up to the speaker and hope the audio comes through.
All right. Well, let's do a check here. Can everybody hear okay? Is that working, Larry?
Everybody here's okay?
Mhm.
Okay.
All righty. Well, hi, everyone. It's nice to be with you tonight. I'm Fred, AB1OC, and Anita, AB1QB, my XYL, and partner in crime and amateur radio, is going to help me tell you a little bit about a pretty interesting activity that we did very early on in our amateur radio career.
Oh, geez, come on. Really? No, that's not a good sign.
Still not good. It turns out that we were both hams for about a year, and I was able to get a free trip to Bora Bora Island as something that was going on with my company. And Anita, nope, still no screen share. And Anita suggested that maybe we should take a radio, which is kind of how this whole story began. So, Larry, I'm still not able to share my screen. I don't know if it's.
Oh, sorry. Wait a minute. Just trying to keep
done.
everything up and running. Okay,
Yeah,
it should be
I
good
understand.
now.
Okay, yep, we got her. Thank you. And I'm going to turn on sound. So, like I said, we were both licensed for about 1 year. Anita a little less, me a little more. And at the time that we did this, we were pretty inexperienced hams. Now, for any of you who've ever been on holiday style DXpedition, you can have a lot of fun with this while you're enjoying a really nice vacation. So Bora Bora is an island in the South Pacific. It's pretty much right out in the middle of the South Pacific. And I must say, I think it's probably one of the most beautiful places in the world. The pictures in here were all taken by us with an iPhone camera. And they don't begin to do justice to how beautiful this place is. So I'm going to kind of take, along with some help from Anita here, take you through kind of everything that went into this. And it's all very much from a brand new ham perspective. talk about planning the place we went, the station, operations, propagation, QSLing, and most importantly, what we learned. So, when this thing first came up now, this was February of 2012, and we were probably about at the same point, or actually a little earlier, I think by about a year in the previous sunspot cycle to where we are now. So it wasn't necessarily the greatest time for propagation, but that turned out to work in our favor. We needed to get a license for French Polynesia. We could not just use SEP privileges. And Anita figured out how to do this, submitted our applications, translated it into French, and managed to secure us FO call signs. Now, you needed to be an extra to do this. And so Anita was a general time, and she actually hustled up and got her extra class license specifically for this trip. We worked out stations that we could travel with, and you can see the picture in the lower left. That was everything we took down there. Our stations, antennas, and all the accessories were in the bottom of one of our suitcases. We did a lot of operating portable and testing ahead of time, and it's probably a good thing we did. I'll tell some more of that story, but we had some things go wrong during the testing that, had they gone wrong on the trip, would have probably ended our operation. We did spend quite a bit of time creating operating aids. We studied propagation, understood the band plans for French Polynesia. They were a little different than they are here in the United States, and just generally tried to get prepared for what we would encounter when we got there. We did do a good job of publicizing our operation. We were on Daily DX, and I know Anita got it announced in a few other places as well. And we had set things up to upload to Club Log and so on as we went, so people could see that they were in our log. So we actually managed to get a lot of stuff right there. And we had set up, we had a web page on QRZ. We had our call signs registered in Logbook of the World and EQSL and all that good stuff. And you know, we were pretty well prepared considering we were complete amateurs when we did this. So Anita, do you want to make a few comments maybe on this chart?
Sure. And actually, I'm going to go back to the licensing and
Okay, go
give
ahead.
you a little more information on that.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So, as Fred said, it is FO is a SEP country, because it's I guess a possession of France, French Polynesia. But we kind of didn't trust, theoretically, you know, we would have a license due to the SEP policies, but we didn't trust that. So I just, you know, I looked at the ARL website, I looked at a few more, and then finally just Googled until I found a website from the French Polynesian Radio Association, I guess, with instructions and a form to fill out a license. So I went ahead, filled it out, and they only speak French. They don't speak English there. So I discovered Google Translate, where I could, you know, type a letter up and type in information in English, and it turned it into French. So I put a cover letter in, filled out the license information on the form, and it's got like a license and a station license. So they wanted to know everything we were bringing, so it would get into the country. And then I put it all together and I mailed it, and, you know, a few weeks, you know, and just hoped Google translated it accurately. I wasn't quite sure what I was saying, but a few weeks later, we got the license, I think by email. I think we got it electronically in the mail. So we were good there. Okay, and then in terms of the destination, again, as Fred said, it's the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful places in the world. It's in the South Pacific, northeast of Australia, but really an island in the middle of, you know, it's surrounded. It's not really near anything. I think even Australia is probably a couple thousand miles away. It was a long flight. We traveled from here to LA, and then LA to Tahiti, and then took another flight from Tahiti to Bora Bora. So the pictures of us when we arrived were not the greatest, as we've been traveling for like almost 24 hours. And then, yeah, from the airport, they actually took us on a boat to the place where we were staying. And then, Bora Bora is part of French Polynesia. There's a lot of different islands. Tahiti is the main one. And the mountain that you saw, Mount Odomatu, was on the main island. It's surrounded by a lagoon, as you can see in this picture, and then what's called a motu, and I believe that's where we were staying. Again, their number one industry is tourism. Water sports are big there, and most of the residents are Polynesian, some French. They mostly speak French. And the the weather there is kind of like Hawaii, warm in summer and sunny, and temperatures usually in the 80s. And as you can see from the picture, just beautiful scenery, flowers, sunsets were great. And I guess this was taken off the bridge. That wasn't the ones. We could see fish through the floor of the place we were staying. But yeah, we took a video of the fish.
Okay.
So.
All right. So, just a little bit more about this. You can see on the map on the left where exactly Bora Bora is. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, basically in the South Pacific. It's a fairly rare iota. I would say I see Bora Bora on a couple times a year. Somebody with a call sign from there and operating as OCO 67. So I looked it up today on Club Log's list, and it's about halfway down the DX Most Wanted list. So that would probably make it kind of semi-rare. It's not something you're going to see on every day like you see stuff in Europe, but it's on a couple times a year. It's not hard to get. Where we stayed, we kind of were on the Motu, as Anita indicated. At least the main part of the hotel we were staying in was here. And then there was a boardwalk that went out to these little hut kinds of things that were the rooms that were literally 6 feet above salt water. Okay. And if you'll notice, our particular room had a 10-meter beam on the back corner. So a little more on that story. This did get us a very interesting, inquisitive visit from the people that ran the hotel, wondering what the hell we were doing. But all of that stuff ended up being carried in our suitcases portable. Now, this place is far away. The closest thing is New Zealand, which is about the equivalent distance from here to California, or a little less than that. It's about 6,500 miles from where we are here, about 4,000 miles. Oops. About 4,000 miles from the West Coast. And I guess I was wrong. I guess we're more like 8 feet above salt water and about 400 yards from shore. So from the standpoint of propagation, this is about as good as it ever gets. We're literally over salt water. This was the station that we took down there. At that time, we had an ICOM 7000. I'd been traveling a lot for my job, and I'd been kind of carrying this thing in a roller bag, kind of a big laptop bag, everywhere I went on business trips and testing it out. 100-watt station. I had a Mac with the software that we needed on it for logging and digital and that kind of stuff. This was before the day when transceivers with integrated sound cards were included, so we had signal links to do digital. And in fact, when we went to Bora Bora, Anita had never made anything other than digital QSOs, and I think I had made like 10 sideband QSOs, and all my experience was on digital as well. So we went to Bora Bora with the intent of doing digital, but when we got there, the grounding was so poor where we were that every time we transmitted, the computer would reset. So we were just about ready to give up, and I'm going to save this for the next chart. And a friend up here sent us an email and said, "Why don't you get on the air on sideband and try calling CQ?" So that get the rest of the story. You can see on the right, the antennas we took, we had a vertical dipole that did 20, 17, 15, 12, and 10 from Transworld Antennas. And it was really pretty neat setup. We had a little control box in the routine. In the room, we could actually switch it between all those bands. So we were actually on 20 through 10 with that one antenna. It worked out really, really well. And then I had built a 2-element 10-meter beam from buddy pole parts. And that antenna there, we kind of propped up. You can see in the corner of the back deck of where we were staying. And we, of course, used the Armstrong rotator to point it. And that whole thing fit in the bottom of a roller bag suitcase. So even though we had a pretty decent antenna farm, it wasn't a big transportation issue at all. Literally, I'll go back and show you the picture. This thing that looks like a duffel bag was the vertical dipole, the Transworld antenna. These things contain 2 complete stations with all the radio equipment. And the buddy pole 10-meter beam and mast lived in the bottom of this roller bag with our clothes. So
Little
that
bit
was
of room for our clothes.
yeah,
Mhm.
this wasn't the only
Yeah.
suitcase we had, but you can see this whole deal, was in the realm of I think we carried these 2 on and we checked like 3 bags or 4 bags, something like that. So it was pretty modest amount of stuff to take down there. Okay. As far as the software goes, there was no FT8 at this point. We didn't have JT65 with us for the HF bands, and we did use that a little bit. And all in all, this combination, especially given we were over salt water, really worked out quite well. So to give you a feel for the salt water effect, I did some easy neck modeling of that Transworld vertical dipole. Now, the easy neck plot here on the left is that antenna over the ground here in New England. And you can see it's not bad. It's a vertical antenna that's end loaded, pretty high takeoff angles. But this is what it looked like over where we put it up in Bora Bora. Same antenna, but because of the salt water, 6.5 dB of higher gain. And the real news is, look at what happened to the takeoff angles. They're like I don't know, maybe 10 degrees, probably less than that, which meant that this was a really excellent DX antenna in the location that we had it down there. All in all, we were very, very happy with the antennas. We made some pretty amazing contacts. We did take an antenna analyzer down there, mostly just to use to adjust the 10-meter beam and get it exactly where we wanted it. And all in all, it was worked out pretty well. I think the coax was only RG8X. I don't think any of our feed lines were any longer than about 25 feet because this place just wasn't that big. But that all worked out fine. Now, we made, now remember, we were new hams. We had no pileup experience. But between the 2 of us, we made 1,550 contacts in 6.5 days. Unfortunately, went to the most beautiful place in the world and spent almost all of our time on the radio. We worked 52 countries, including a lot of stuff that was halfway around the world in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. One of the things I'm most proud of is I have worked all states from French Polynesia. We literally worked every state in the U.S. In those 6.5 days. You can see the counts by country, a lot of US, a lot of Japan. Japan was probably the closest densely populated place to where we were. South America, Canada, Australia was pretty good, and so was Argentina. And these are our longest contacts. Now, halfway around the world is a little over 12,000 miles, right? So you can see some of these contacts were pretty much halfway around the globe with a little 100-watt radio and portable antennas. Saudi Arabia, Uzbekistan, Kuwait, Ukraine, Spain, Kyrgyzstan. Some of this stuff was pretty rare too. All in all, we were very, very pleased with the way the station performed. Okay. All right. Here's my worked all states from French Polynesia. This one was a little bit of a squeaker. I did have to arrange a sked with Montana in order to get the last state. And then the day we did the sked, I worked Montana 3 more times in the afternoon. So I guess the person that did the sked probably let all their friends know that there was this clown down in Bora Bora that was trying to work Montana. So we probably would have gotten it done anyway. But this is a really cool memento from our trip. And just a little bit of details on the breakdown of the contacts. You can see that most of our operation turned out to be sideband. Now, what I have to tell you is we were woefully unprepared to run a sideband holiday DXpedition. I literally had 10 sideband QSOs to my name when we went down there. And the intent was to make it all about digital, which you can see we did end up solving our grounding problems and making some digital contacts. But what happened, I remember it well, it was on a Tuesday at about 11 o'clock when I tried this the first time. I got on, I think it was probably 17-meter sideband or something like that, and started calling CQ. And about the third or fourth contact, somebody spotted us on one of the big DX clusters. And I found myself in the middle of probably one of the biggest pileups I ever heard. Now, I knew there was such a thing as split. I had never done it. So I'm there trying to work QSOs and put people in the log while I'm reading the 7000 manual to figure out how to get the radio into split and do that. But at the end of the day, we ended up being pretty accomplished sideband operators. We probably came home with, I don't know, over 1,000 sideband QSOs. So we kind of checked that box off. Anita had no sideband experience, and after a day and a half, I finally coaxed her to get on and work JAs at night. And Anita had a really tough time with the accents, and so she would, and the Japanese generally are very patient people. They would give her their call signs to her 4 or 5 times, and then she'd give them a 5.9 plus 20 dB signal report. So Anita came home with a pretty good pile of several hundred sideband QSOs as well. And the thing that was amazing about this place is how quiet it was. I ran the radio with a second preamp on most of the time, and I worked lots of contacts on sideband that didn't even move the S meter. It was literally that quiet that even though with a second preamp on, they were literally S0 contacts on the meter, we were still able to copy them. We did do a little bit of JT65 for some of the contacts that were really long. We worked a ton of people up here in New England. What we did each day basically is we'd start out on 20, but we'd work our way up to 10 meters where we had the beam as quickly as we could. So the bulk of this operation was a 10-meter operation. And we were about the only thing that people in the United States could hear on the South Pacific at this particular time. We had very good transequatorial propagation, and being over saltwater, low takeoff angles, and having a beam, I think really drove the interest in the event that we were making. Some interesting contacts that were very memorable. I worked a station on sideband on 10 meters that was QRP 2.5 watts in like Iowa or someplace like that. I worked another station up here in the Northeast with 10 watts in a vertical. And we worked South Africa on JT65. Anita had got the phone QSO with Kyrgyzstan, which is pretty damn rare, probably rarer than we were. And so, a lot of really memorable kinds of contacts. Propagation was a big deal. Now, Anita is a little bit of a propagation expert, and she did a great job of preparing a whole book of predictions for the different bands we were going to be on and when the best propagation would be back here for our friends and what frequencies and all that. We did some whisper propagation tests from here before we went down there to kind of understand what our antennas were capable of. And as I said, we had good openings every day on 10 meters. By the time we hit about 1:30 or 2 o'clock, we were on 10 meters and a local time and working pretty much the whole US and some of Europe. Earlier in the day it was 15 meters mostly is that we started out on. And then when it got dark, we'd switch to 17 for the late afternoon and 20 meters overnight for Australia, New Zealand, and Japan. This was an amazing education and propagation. We could literally hear the gray line clearly moving across the US, especially on 10 meters. I think some of that was the TEP enhancements that we were using were very sensitive to where the gray line was. So we could really hear it. You know, we'd start out, we'd hear people up here in the Northeast, then we hear Ohio, then we hear the Midwest, then we get Texas and South America. We get the big square states a little bit, and then we do California and the band would go out. But it literally was very dramatic, the impact that had. And so we not only did we get a lot of good pileup experience out of this one, but we got a pretty good education and propagation too, at least on the higher bands. QSLing, literally the picture on our QSL card, Anita and I went to breakfast one morning. We're sitting out there eating breakfast, and I said, boy, isn't it pretty here? I'm going to go take a picture. I walked to the edge of where the restaurant was and held my iPhone up and took that picture. And it ended up being our QSL card. The photographs of this place do not even begin to capture the beauty that you see here. Bora Bora is just an amazing place. The picture on the back is the place we stayed. You can see our 10-meter beam there. That's also on the back of our QSL card. And we pretty much QSL'd on Logbook of the World, EQSL, and we did cards, Bureau and Direct. We uploaded to Club Log as we went, so people could see that they were in our log. And you know, what I would say on the QSLing now, we had 91% of the contacts we made down there have QSL and confirmed, which I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that. So obviously, I think a combination of 10 meters being at the very beginning of the sunspot cycle and being on a semi-rare iota really caused a lot of people to not only want to talk to us and get the contact, but also to confirm it. And 60% of all the contacts we made, I just checked this today, have been confirmed on Logbook. The rest are basically through cards. And you know, the QSL card that we made turned out really pretty nice. We work with a guy in the Ukraine, UX5UO, for our cards, and he does a really nice job. You can see we kind of set it up so Anita and I could use the same card. And I had a picture of our station and where we stayed and all that kind of jazz on there. So what did we learn? Well, we were FO/AB10C and FO/AB1QB. And on sideband, that's a lot to say 1,000 or 1,500 times. So it would have been nice if we'd have just gotten straight out FO call signs for the operation. If we ever went back there again, we probably could have done that if we'd have written a letter to go with our license. We just didn't know any better. Tests before leaving. An interesting story. I built that 10-meter beam literally the weekend before we left on this trip and set it up in my backyard. And I think we worked Australia and Japan for the first time on 10 meters with it. So I said, hey, we're taking this to Bora Bora. This antenna is really good and it's portable. Unfortunately, the day before we left, we had a windstorm. It blew it over and broke it. And so literally I had a business trip to Washington, D.C. Anita hustled up and called the Buddy Pole people. They were great. They shipped overnight replacement parts to my hotel in Washington, D.C., where we met up with the parts we needed to fix the 10-meter beam and take it to Bora Bora with us. But the moral of that story is that you really need to test your equipment thoroughly ahead of time. Make sure you don't have any electrical, mechanical, or reliability problems. Because, of course, when you get someplace like this, you don't want to find yourself without an antenna or a key piece of gear. While we did work everywhere in the world, practically all continents, we would have, if we'd known what we knew today, we probably would have been a little better on various bands to try to give more coverage to places other than North America. Also, we did not know CW at the time. We do now, but it would have sure been nice if we could have done some Morse code while we were down there. I'm sure people would have appreciated that. We did set up a full-size vertical for 40 meters, and in the winds down there, we immediately took it down because it was unsafe. So, you know, if we ever did this again, and we didn't have a whole lot of space at this, you know, this room we were staying in was maybe 30 feet by 20 feet or something like that. It wasn't real big to place to put up a larger antenna. But with a little more creativity, we could have probably come up with some sort of loaded antenna that would have worked on 40, that would have been more practical, and that would have been a good idea. I really wish I had a voice queue. I was hoarse for about a week after this, because literally, you know, for those 1,500 QSOs, we probably called 2,000 or 3,000 times, and we did every one of them with just the microphone. And we did take, you know, a lot of stuff that we probably could have left at home. So that would have been a plus as well, although I think we were reasonably efficient packers as well. So we still occasionally get QSLs from Bora Bora. I probably, every time I get a bureau drop, there's usually 1 or 2 in there. This led us to lots of activity on pileups, 13 colonies, W1AW portable, contests, field day, all kinds of stuff. It was a great intro to pile-up operations and sideband. I'm retired now, but I continued to take my radio and my portable station on business trips with me and had a lot of fun with that. Learned CW. And based on the success with the buddy poles, I developed 2 more antennas that actually we used pretty extensively before we had our tower up here in our backyard, and also at field day. A 3-element beam on 10 meters, which is actually really easy to build with buddy pole parts. You can see a picture of that antenna sitting in our backyard. And I did also build one for 15 meters, and I would say while it worked, mechanically it was at the limit of what's sensible to do with buddy pole parts. You know, 15-meter 3-element beam is getting to be a decent sized antenna. And it was a little much to be sitting on a tripod out in the wind and stuff. We used to scramble every time it got windy to take it down before the wind basically destroyed it. If I did it again, I would probably take a 500-watt amplifier with me. That would have been obviously made us much easier to hear. And you know, Anita and I constantly talk about doing something in the Caribbean. I suspect before it's all said and done, we'll do something like this again. Tremendous experience for 2 completely green hams. And in a lot of ways, I think this really sharpened and defined our interest in amateur radio, you know, early on in our ham careers. So, Larry, I don't know if you have any interest in this, but I'm happy to shoot you a copy of this to post. There's a lot of links in here on some of the, you know, some of the stuff that we used as part of the project. Maybe some of that information would be useful to folks. So with all of that, by the way, there's the dock where we were getting ready to get back on the boat to go home to Tahiti and end our trip. Just an amazing experience in amateur radio in a beautiful place is all I can say for it. It was really pretty special. So with that, does anybody have any questions, comments? Anybody ever do a holiday style DXpedition of your own that you want to talk about a little bit?
Anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
Power, was that off a battery or?
How did you power everything, Fred?
I just had a 20 amp 110 volt supply, and I think it could do 110 220. I can't remember if we might have had 220 volts. I had a plug set that I've been traveling with for all my international business trips that we took down there, so we could, you know, a lot of power supplies will work on 110 or 220. I'm pretty sure the place we were staying in might have had 220 power, but nothing special. Just you know, just a West Mountain Radio style power supply that was 20 amps, and we did have a spare. We didn't need it, but that was it. Nothing fancy. It was just a 100-watt setup, so you know, we didn't need a whole lot of power.
Other questions?
Yeah, Larry.
Yeah.
Fred, what did you bring for tools, if anything, besides your equipment? You bring a tool pouch?
Yeah, you know, I have a little toolkit with like pliers and a soldering iron and you know, some interchangeable screwdrivers and stuff like that. I did bring that down there. We really didn't need it. You know, the nice thing, the transroll antenna is kind of folds up. It's sort of mechanically made with rivets and stuff that you take it out of the bag and you unfold the loading arms and stuff and you put the sections together. It has its own tripod. And the buddy pole stuff, if you ever work with a buddy pole, everything is threaded into screws together. So the tools were more there in case something broke that we had to fix it. But you know, I had probably taken some of this stuff on not the transrolled antenna and the buddy pole stuff, but I'd taken a buddy pole kit and the station on numerous business trips. I operated from Arizona, Florida, Colorado, and a few other places with it. So I had some pretty good experience with, you know, using it, and we'd already dealt with everything that was going to break or fail on it long before we ever went there. So, and I think, you know, when you do this kind of operation, you don't want to use your equipment that you're going to take portable on a major operation like this for the first time when you get there. That's really asking for problems. It's always a good idea to use your stuff pretty hard in advance so that everything that's going to fail, break, or give you problems does so before you get there, and you can have a chance to resolve those issues.
Does that answer your question, Steve?
Yeah, that's fine.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Fred, did you meet any local hams?
I did not. I believe there might be one or two hams on Bora Bora at this point, but I'm not even sure there were any at the time. And the reason I say that is, well, maybe they were just trying to give us the airtime, but I did not hear anybody any closer than Australia and New Zealand the whole time we were on the air down there. And literally for 6 days, we were probably on the air for 8 hours a day, including well into the evening. Some nights we were on till midnight or 1 in the morning until the Jays finally got tired of us. So, you know, I would have thought if there would have been any active hams while we were there, I'd have probably heard them. But I do believe, you know, folks take, for good reason, portable stations to places like this fairly regularly. So that's probably most of what puts Bora Bora on the air.
Cool. Gary, you had a question?
Yeah. If you were going today, what transceiver would you take?
I'd probably take his ICOM 7300.
That makes sense.
You know, good receiver, easy to operate, digital stuff built in. Probably take an Elecraft KPA 500 if I could handle the weight.
Great.
And you know, I think the buddy pole, you know, the nice part about the buddy pole is that particular setup is a direct feed antenna. As long as you're careful how you rig it up, that thing probably handle 500 watts with no trouble at all.
Cool. Other questions? Anybody from Zoom land have a question other than Jürgen? No? Any other questions? Go ahead, Charlie.
Did you get to see the island at all?
Did you do any sightseeing, Fred?
Yeah, we did take one afternoon and did a jet ski tour around the whole lagoon. And that was really enjoyable. Of course, the meals were wonderful. We took time out for at least 2 nice meals a day just to, you know, basically sit out and enjoy the view and the scenery. And we did take a few dips in the pool, but mostly we were on the air, really.
You didn't go swimming in the ocean there?
No, there are sharks in the ocean there. That's why they have a sort of an area that's kind of like a pool that's an extension of the lagoon.
Okay.
But, you know, the sharks can't get in, so you do need to. We did see a shark, I think, when we were on the jet ski tour, and that was exciting. So, but no, I mean, Bora Bora is a really, really, really beautiful place. I wish we could go back there. I'm not sure I could afford to go back there on my own dime. The company I'd worked for had a really good year, and this was a reward for all of the folks that made that happen. And but you know, it's a trip of a lifetime if you ever get to go.
What was the weather like?
Perfect every single day. Yeah, you can see from the photographs that I shared. Like Anita said, in the 80s, usually a nice breeze in the afternoon. Clouds in the sky. I think it rained for about an hour one afternoon, if I remember right, and then it immediately cleared up and got like this again. Water is crystal clear. You saw the picture of the fish.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything you could imagine a place like this would be and more, I think.
Nice. Great.
So folks, Larry, would you guys be interested in spending a little time on satellites and EME? I have a few videos. I know Gary said there was some interest in that. If you want, I'll play a few videos for you, maybe for another 20 minutes or so, if you want, or we can stop here if you'd like.
What does everybody want? You want to see some more stuff? Let's do it, Fred.
All right. Why don't you take a poll in the room? How many people are more interested in the satellites, and how many people are more interested in EME? So I know where to start.
All right. So in the dark here, if you're interested in satellite, raise your hand. About 3/4. And if you're interested in Earth, Moon, Earth, raise your hand. All right. So it's about even.
Okay, so maybe we'll do both. All right, I have more satellite videos than I have EME videos. So let me, and I'm going to share my whole desktop because I'm going to be jumping around a lot. So I apologize in advance for my messy desktop here. So the first thing I want to show you now, when Anita and I built our station, we put up a very large 2-meter Yagi, and we actually did no elevation, nothing special. And we actually made quite a few EME contacts on 2 meters with just that. And if you have a really good 2-meter antenna, and you can put a preamp on it or something to, improve its performance a little bit, you might give this a try. You might be surprised what you can do. I'll show you a quick picture of the antenna that we had when we first started doing this. Let's see here. Yeah, here it is. This is the antenna that we did our 2-meter EME with. Let me see, I have a full-size picture of it here. Here we go. Now, this is a pretty big antenna. It's 18 elements on a 36-foot boom. We have this mounted at about 120 feet or so on our tower. And this plus a low-noise preamp and about a 900-watt amplifier was good enough to, I think, put 17 countries in the log on 2-meter EME.
Wow.
The only real problem with this guy was that since it was horizontal, it only works when the moon is rising, and that's about a 30 to 40 minute interval, or when the moon is about to set, which is another 30 to 40 minute interval. And what we learned about that is those things tend to happen at somewhere between 1 a.m. and about 4 a.m. in the morning usually. And so it wasn't the most pleasant time of the year, or time of the day, I should say, to do it. But it actually worked quite well. And, New Jersey is just as hard to work off the moon as South Korea is. So we really didn't have any, other than finding people on with bigger stations than we had. We really didn't have problems working any place that had, say, a 2 Yagi station or better, or more power than we did. So you don't necessarily have to think big array to get started in EME. Something like this. And a lot of people will go portable with an antenna like this on a mast and actually position it by hand. The moon doesn't move very fast. So, and the other advantage you have with this deal is you can take advantage of ground gain, which kind of gooses your antenna up a good bit more. So at any rate, after doing all of this a few years back, I kind of always had EME on my bucket list. And we built a little more capable station for EME. Let me just show you a quick picture of the antennas. And by the way, this website is our blog, stationproject.blog. So if you're interested in this stuff, you can go read all about these projects. But this is our current EME antenna system. It's a hybrid freestanding sharply guide tower. It's about 30 feet tall. And we now have 112 elements on 2 meters. These antennas they look like they would be circular, but they're not. They're actually a combination horizontal and vertical antenna on the same booms. And we can choose to either transmit or receive horizontal, vertical, or in the case of receive, we can use an SDR that will actually follow and phase the best of the two to follow polarity as we operate. So this is what I would say is an 80th percentile EME station on 2 meters. There are some out there that are much bigger, but it's a pretty capable one. I'm now working the kind of stations that were with a single antennas that used to work me with my basic setup. And I just have one other picture. If you want to see what a big EME station looks like, let me just see. I think I have a picture of one here. Yeah, here we go. I think this is probably going to do it. This was our first EME station. This is all done digitally with JT65 or variants. That was one of the stations we worked. You can see they have a very similar setup to what I have now. But a really big station, the kind that you can do Morse code or maybe even hear your voice come off the moon, might look a little bit more like this. This would be considered a large EME station.
I think NC1L in Southwick has something like that.
Yeah. If you want to do more, this is the kind of thing where you get on sideband and you yell on the microphone, "Hello, moon." And 3 seconds later, you hear your voice, "Hello, moon," come back off the moon. And it used to be before JT65 and Q65 and some of the other digital protocols, you needed a station like this to do EME. But now with the digital modes, I would say 500 watts on 2 meters, an antenna like the one I showed you in that first picture, and JT65, and you could probably get 30, 40, 50, maybe even countries over time off the moon on 2 meters. It doesn't take a whole lot. So what's it like to make a QSO? Well, I have a recording of a 2 meter EME QSO that I put together a little while back for demonstration. What you see on the screen now is the antenna system tracking the moon. We're making this QSO at night, so you can see the moon quite. Can you all hear that okay? Is
Yes.
the audio coming through? All right, good. I'll start it again. I'm not going to try to talk over this. It's pretty self-explanatory, but we'll talk about it at the end. What you're going to see here is the array that I showed you at the end there in use to make a contact with Sweden on 2 meters off the moon. What you see on the screen now is the antenna system tracking the moon. We're making this QSO at night, so you can see the moon quite clearly. And the station we want to work is just finishing up a contact with someone else, so we're going to wait for him to complete. The equipment's on the left there, by the way.
So we're going to click on him, and we're going to turn our transmitter on.
Now this is
It's going to take about 50 seconds
about 5 minutes
for us to respond to HB9Q with our call sign and grid square. So I'm sending my call sign to him and my grid square, so that's the first step of the QSO. Yep, there we go. So now I'm going to go on to the next step. So let's see if we can actually listen to this. That's what I'm sending. So just alternating tones now for this step of the process. All right, now we should expect to see a Roger, Roger, Roger pair of tones from him, which would be here and here. So we should be seeing a tone right above my cursor. Yep, right there it is. Right there it is. There it is. There's the RRR. I'm going to send 73. There's the 73. And that's how.
Okay, now a couple things. This is a special variant of JT65 called MAP65 that does that polarity steering. And it's also designed, if you can believe this, for EME contests, of which there are some. I was in EME contest that actually takes place over 2 separate weekends that are spread out a few weeks apart. And I think I was on for about, I want to say about 10 hours and made over 40 contacts off the moon. And it was pretty much busy the whole time. And what you see going on here is you have a waterfall display here that's broadbanded. And there are quite a few signals, EME signals. Here's one here. There's one here. There's another one here. There's probably some weak stuff going on up here. And then this is like a zoom in on the specific contact we're doing. And these are all the stations that I'm hearing, most of them in Europe in this particular time, that are all being decoded at once. Now, this system is so sensitive. There's a 5-watt 2-meter beacon in New York. And if I put my antennas at it, I can hear it clearly on 2 meters with this. It's, you know, you're talking a lot of gain, a low noise preamps, and pretty much a premier antenna system. So you can, you know, if you work somebody close, the way you tell it's off the moon is the time delay. Here you can see that the round trip delay for this contact was 2.7 seconds, which is basically how long it takes for your signal to go out to the moon, reflect, and come back. So had this been, you know, something short, for these particular parts that actually do the coding, not just the tones, where I can measure the delay, that would have indicated that I was really making a terrestrial QSO. And you got to watch that. If I work somebody in New England, let's say I work somebody in Connecticut, there's an even chance that I'll hear them both off the moon, and I'll also hear them direct terrestrially. And sometimes you'll see 2 decodes, at one with a very short delay and one with a longer delay for the 2 signals that you're hearing, one off the moon and, you know, and one locally. You do need some power to do this. The current amplifier that I had been using does about 900 watts on 2 meters. I just had a legal limit full duty cycle 1500 watt amp built. I haven't had a chance to integrate that into the station, but that should make me a little bit easier to hear once it's installed. The antennas have individual preamps and a whole switching system on them so that you can listen to both the horizontal and vertical plane. And then we run it into a phase coherent 2-channel SDR, and this software computes polarity angles and automatically optimizes the receive in real time, which means there's not too much fading. So at any rate, that's an EME station. This is a very technical kind of thing to do, which is one of the reasons that I enjoyed. I think a lot of people that do EME do it because of the technical challenge in putting together a station like this. It's kind of toward maybe the more advanced end of VHF kinds and UHF kinds of stuff. So with that, any questions or comments or anything about 2-meter EME before we move over and talk about satellites a little bit?
Anybody have any questions? Nope.
Nope.
No.
All right, so that's what it's like to make a 2-meter contact off the moon. Let's look at satellites. Now, satellites are much easier to get started, and you can literally have 2 Baofeng HTs, a handheld arrow antenna, a smartphone, and a voice recorder. You go out and you can work satellite, low Earth orbit satellites just fine with that. And honestly, most people that get started in satellites start out that way. If there's enough interest, I have a whole talk of how we progressed from that type of station through what we have now. It's relatively easy to have a lot of fun with this stuff. The current stations we have are computer controlled. And I have a few videos here that will give you some sense of how that works. One of our stations is portable that we take to field day in schools, and we would take them to some license classes. So I think I'm going to start out with that video and just give you a feel for how this works. Now, when you use a computer, the computer does a few different things. First of all, you're dealing with low Earth orbit satellites, which means they will come up over the horizon, pass overhead, and set in about 10 minutes. And so your antennas have to be set up to follow them. Now, when you're doing it with a handheld antenna, you use a smartphone and you just point it with your arm. And you can do that accurately enough with satellites that have FM repeaters in them that you can make it work. The other thing that goes on with satellites is Doppler shift. They're moving so fast, they're moving at about 17,000 miles an hour, that the speed actually shifts the RF frequency that you hear and that they hear you at. And for certain types of satellite scenarios, particularly where you use sideband or CW, the computer also compensates for those frequency shifts. So the video I'm going to show you here, you'll see the portable satellite station. We had it set up in a license class. The computer's running it, and you'll see that the computer's both steering the antennas, and it will be to track the satellite, and it will be adjusting the radio uplink and downlink frequencies to compensate for Doppler shift. Almost all satellites are crossband repeaters. You'll transmit on 70 centimeters and listen on 2 meters, or vice versa. They're kind of like bent pipes, and that's done in order to keep the satellite simple. All right, so with all that, let's see how this works. So there's the computer. The radio, you can see the uplink on this satellite is on 2 meters. The downlink is on 70. We're on a linear satellite. This is probably FO29. And on the right, you'll see the ASL rotator controller, and the computer is basically running both. If you look closely, you'll see the rotator headings change, and you'll also see the frequencies on the radio change slightly as we track the satellite across the pass. Now this is sped up. Here we're using circularly polarized antennas. And the reason for that is most amateur satellites are very simple on the antenna side. They literally have a dipole. And the satellite will typically be tumbling and not necessarily oriented horizontal or vertical or anything else. So you use circular polarization so that you don't have a lot of what is called spin fading when the satellite rotates and the polarity doesn't match, the satellite fades out. So that's what you're looking at here. So that's the technical part. Now, what's it like to actually make a contact? Well, there are two types of satellites that are common. FM, what we call FM easy sats, which are single channel FM repeaters, just like a ground-based repeater. And satellites that have linear transponders that might be 25 or 30 kilohertz wide, and they'll repeat all of the signals that they hear. So in an FM easy sat, only one person uses it at a time. Sat covers the whole United States. It's a bedlam. And the contacts are kept very short. You don't have conversations. You exchange call signs and grid squares, and you give somebody else a chance. The advantage of that type of satellite is you can do that with an arrow antenna and 2 HTs. It's not complicated at all because FM does a lot of the hard stuff, like compensating for the Doppler shift for you. Also, the ISS carries a live FM repeater, and it's got a lot of power and big antennas. So generally, that's pretty easy to work. The more interesting and more challenging piece is to use the satellites with linear transponders and do sideband or CW on them. I'm going to show you a quick video here of both types so you could get a sense of what the contacts are like. I think we'll start out with the FM one. And this one is going to be on SO50, which is a Saudi Arabian satellite, I believe. And this is what it's like to make a satellite contact on an FM bird. Oh, hold on. I probably got a better video than this. There we go. By the way, on the software, this computer program is tracking and predicting where the satellite's going to be. You can see this is going to pass almost overhead. The path it's going to take is down through this blue line, and the red circle are the places on the ground that can hear it as it moves. And you'll see down here the radio frequencies that are being corrected for Doppler shift, as well as the software is pointing and tracking the satellite. So with that, let's listen to see what this sounds like.
AB10C, Fox Nancy 42. Whiskey Bravo 3 CSY 59 Fox Nancy 42.
Roger, QSL, you're 59 also, sound green into the bird. I'm in Foxtrot, November 10, 73.
73, and thanks for FN 10. AB10C, FN 42. Who's the Victor Echo again?
Somebody else is on, not just for you. It's Victor Alpha 3, November Alpha. I'm not sure why he's not making a bird. Usually he does.
Victor Alpha 3, November Alpha, you're 59 FN 42 from AB10C.
No, sorry, this is WB3CSY, but I just wanted to let you know that's the guy that was calling Victor Alpha 3, November Alpha.
Copy that. Hopefully we'll get him before the pass is over. He was pretty strong there for a while.
Alpha 3, November Alpha. Most of them is okay.
Okay, Victor Alpha 3, November Alpha. Thanks for FN03. You're 59 FN42 from AB10C.
Now I know this guy. I've gotten to know him, Victor Alpha 3, November Alpha. He has an arrow antenna on a tripod in his kitchen, and the radio sits on his kitchen table, and that's how he works satellites. So again, very modest station. And, you know, to do this type of operating, I've done it many times, take an arrow antenna or an elk antenna out, portable to a picnic or field day. Use your cell phone as a tracking device. You make 4 or 5 contacts and have an absolute ball. So that's FM. And you can see you don't really have much of a conversation. These contacts are just grid squares, call signs, and that's pretty much it. Now let's look at some linear contacts and to do these, you can tune manually for Doppler shift, but it's very hard to do it accurately. So generally for a linear setup like the FO29 that I'm going to do here, you'll want to use a computer. Now there are probably 3 working FM satellites, and that includes the ISS, and there are about a dozen linears. So you'll find a lot more opportunity to make contacts and have conversations and stuff if you go the extra yard and put together a computer-based station. So at any rate, let's see what it's like to make a contact on a linear. And here we're going to be using sideband.
CQ, Alpha.
Now, by the way, you notice you hear my voice with some delay. What's going on is I'm listening to my own voice come back through the satellite. Just like it will repeat the other stations that we work, it will repeat my voice, and that's an important operating aid to get the location of your frequencies in the up and down link so your tone is right, and also confirm that you're actually getting into the satellite.
Bravo 1 Oscar Charlie CQ.
Alpha Bravo 1 Oscar Charlie from Whiskey 0 Nancy Bravo Charlie, over.
Okay, Whiskey 0 Nancy Bravo Charlie. Nice signal. 5.
Oh, we had a spin fade there.
59 Fox Nancy 42, Jim.
QSL, Fred, you're 59 and Echo Mike 48, Echo Mike 48. Thanks for the
That
Fox Nancy
contact is
42,
in
Echo
Missouri.
Romeo. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good luck and have fun.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. This is Alpha Bravo 1 Oscar Charlie CQ.
Rising.
AB10C from Whiskey Charlie 7 Victor. From Whiskey 7 over.
Okay, Whiskey Charlie 7 Victor. You're 59 Fox Nancy 42. And was that Delta Nancy 45? All right, I got it. Thanks for the call and have a great day. 73, this is Alpha Bravo.
You notice how you hear them fade in and out? That's because the satellite is rotating, and every now and then that dipole turns the pointy end at your station, and you basically take a fade like that. That's kind of normal stuff for these satellites.
Bravo 1 Oscar Charlie CQ. Romeo Oscar again.
November 8, Romeo Oscar.
Right, we got it. November 8, Romeo Oscar. Hello again, you're 5-9 Fox Nancy 42, Ron.
Roger, Roger, QSL. You're a very solid 5-9 here in Echo Max 00. Thank you so much for the contact, that's 7-3.
That's 7-3s as well, and thank you for the contact.
So you can see, now this is a fairly high elliptical orbit satellite. You can see we're covering the whole United States, the Caribbean, and a good part of Canada on this pass. And because, you know, these transponders will handle 6-7 contacts, more if they're CW, at a time, it's a much more relaxed environment. It's possible to get worked all states on satellite from here, although Hawaii, you would need almost a perfect pass on one specific satellite to pull that off right now. It's not uncommon to work South America, the Caribbean, and Europe when the passes are out over the Atlantic, or like this one probably would produce Caribbean and Latin American contacts before it was over. So hopefully that gives you a feel for what the whole range of satellites are like. Does anybody have any questions about any of that stuff? Has anybody done satellites here? Do you all have some satellite ops in the group here?
I know Gary operates, and anybody else operate satellite here? Not in person, I guess.
Okay. Any questions at all about any of that stuff? But again, there's tons of articles on stationproject.blog if you're interested in building a satellite station, anything from the simple to the complicated to the portable, it's all there somewhere.
Any questions?
Program do you use for satellite communication? Not logging, but
Tracking?
the automatic where it automatically switches for you.
Did you hear that?
I didn't really get the whole question, Larry. Can you repeat it?
Sure. He wants to know what software you use to track the satellites.
There are two programs that are popular now. One for the Macintosh, which is what you saw here. That one's called Mac Doppler. And the other program is PCSat 32, which is a Windows-based program. I like Mac Doppler because it's very modern. Now, I do a lot of this kind of stuff in schools and at Hamfest for demonstrations and things, and I like a program that, you know, looks like it's high tech and modern, but they both work equally well. And you can also get apps on smartphones that will do the tracking part. That's what I use when I do the handheld thing portable. There's, I think, ISS Tracker, and there's a couple other free. These programs are all free. They run on an iPhone or Android. And what I'll do with when I'm operating portable is I'll just put my iPhone on the ground at my feet, and I'll have a little track there that shows, you know, relative where I am, where the satellite is, and I'll just look down and use that to point my antenna. That's my rotor system. And of course, with FM, the FM capture effect is enough to do most of the compensation for Doppler on 2 meters. And you just program a couple memories in your HTs for 70 centimeters, and that takes care of the rest. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Anybody from the Zoom land have a question? I know I've got an arrow antenna I've had for a couple of years. It's been sitting in the trunk of my car.
You got to get it out, Larry.
Find the time to use it.
2 HTs are a great way to go. You definitely want to be able to hear yourself in the downlink so that you know when you're on the end of satellite. But literally 2 Baofangs or any 2 HTs you have laying around, you program one for 70 centimeters for the satellite you want, and the other for 2 meters, and you talk on one and you listen on the other.
Cool.
And it's pretty simple to do it, and it's a ton of fun.
Yeah, it's on my list. I just have to find the time.
I understand.
Cool.
All right.
Anybody have any questions on anything
any other
tonight?
questions? I'll just mention one last thing. When we do boot camps, some of you probably have attended Ham Boot Camp. By the way, as of this year, I believe Ham Boot Camp is going to become an ARL program and be delivered nationwide. The next one's going to be in May. And one of the things we always do is we bring our satellite station onto Zoom and we do a live satellite contact through Zoom so that everybody involved can see the whole process. And sometimes one of the folks in the audience will actually get their first satellite contact through Zoom in the ground station here. So if you're interested in satellites, you might want to check out Ham Boot Camp. And you know, we'll be doing a piece on how to do all this stuff and get started with the arrow and all the rest there.
And obviously you'll be having something at Ham Expo too.
Yeah, well, most of that will be demonstration oriented. You know, we'll have a display, Larry. We probably way back when we were in Boxborough and the bar was right by the outdoors there, we actually brought that portable satellite station you saw in my first video and set it up and ran it there. Unfortunately, with the way the space works in the current setup in Marlborough, we really can't pull that stunt off anymore. But we will have a display there with you know, an arrow antenna on a tripod and a whole bunch of videos and some information to people there who know how to do this stuff and can answer everybody's questions. Talk about it with you.
Well, if you could send me the list that you had of all the information and put a list for your blog too, because I'm sure there's a lot of people here that want to check that out. And
all right, sounds good. I'll do that, Larry. I'll do it right away.
And we want to thank you very much, both on the Zoom side and the in-person side, for joining us tonight. Awesome presentations.
Thanks. It's fun. I love talking about this stuff. It brings back lots of great memories.
Thanks a lot,
everybody.
Fred.
Thank you very much.
All right, stay dry, warm and dry, everybody.
I know.
What's that, John? Oh, okay. Everybody have a good evening, and thanks for participating. And I'm recording the video, so in a couple of days, Vanessa, well, once I get it to Vanessa, it'll be up on the website too. So everybody have a good evening, have a safe weekend, and hopefully we'll see you at the Mount Tom Fleet tomorrow.
7-3.
73, everybody. Have a great one.
Thank you, Fred and Anita.
You're welcome. Thanks, Larry, for the opportunity. Appreciate it.